Doesn't appear the College Football Playoff Committee can keep their story straight. It's a lockdown Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Thank you for making Locked On Sunbelt, which is part of the Locked On Network, the number one sports network, podcast network out there. So we do appreciate it. Okay. We will get to AState taking on the Cajuns. That'll be on national TV. Maybe you see the end of it. I do have to work. Be right back. I do have to work later tonight, so we'll probably see the end of that ball game. All right, I forgot to plug in, and the computer's going to go down if I don't plug in. There we go. Okay. And then we'll get to Sunbelt Hoops, big night on Tuesday night, and we'll talk about Wednesday night's ball games as well. Okay. So doesn't seem like anybody outside of Ohio State, Indiana, and A&M, maybe Notre Dame, and maybe Oklahoma, particularly happy about the college football playoff rankings. Okay. And obviously Tulane got in there. They have a slightly tougher schedule than JMU. Okay. But it feels like, and you guys call me out if I'm wrong, and maybe it's okay to be this way, but it seems like the college football playoff has a specific reason for each metric, I guess is what we're going to say. So we're going to go through a bunch of these and hear what Hunter Yurchek, as he's so beloved in Arkansas to begin with, why he's in charge of this thing, I do not know. Okay. So they admitted that Tulane played in a tougher, or stated, not admitted, stated that Tulane has Duke, Northwestern, and Ole Miss. They got hammered by Ole Miss. That game wasn't particularly close. But they did play a couple of Power 4 squads. Okay. Those teams, as pointed out somewhere on Twitter, played home and home with Tulane. All right. No one's in a rush to play at Harrisonburg and JMU, as the case may be. Washington State is coming in because they need opponents. And so Tulane and the AAC is better this year than the Sun Belt. That's a fact, okay? At least I think it is, all right? Some of those teams, haven't played the toughest of all schedules. Like, was it UNT, like one of the softest schedules in America? All right, and we'll see where Navy actually ends up. We've been through that. So they just say that College Football Committee said Tulane they played the Power 4 squads, and they had a tougher schedule, and the AAC is tougher than the Sun Belt. Okay. Chalk that up. That's okay. But then when they talked about Notre Dame and Miami, who each have 2 losses, except one of those 2 teams has a loss to the other. And I'm not sure Reese Davis followed up on that, because the next question would be, because that Hunter Yurchek said, A&M's losses are better than Miami's losses. Well, that's true. But one of those losses is Miami. Like, they lost to the other team. Why does losses to SMU and Louisville outweigh Miami's win over A&M? That makes no sense. Or I'm sorry, over Notre Dame. I said A&M. Over Notre Dame. That makes no sense. All right. And then people are getting in, we mentioned that Tulane, strength of schedule. Like, how does Alabama fall that far, losing a 3-point game to Oklahoma? What are we doing? Because they have, like, the best win. They beat Georgia, right? Alabama beat Georgia. And so I'm just trying to figure out what the criteria is, because it seems to change And obviously there's some recency bias because this is done every week. It's a TV show. It's going to be based on what happened recently. But I don't understand what we're doing. It's very confusing. And these schedules are all done way in advance. So it's not like you can change them, although it seems like a bunch of Sunbelt teams are getting dropped because of more conference games. But in one breath, we're talking about Tulane is playing a tougher schedule. But in another breath, we're talking Miami's losses are worse than Notre Dame's losses, even though one is to the other team. Well, what about Tulane's loss? Like, they lost to UTSA. Well, the AAC is tougher. Well, Texas State doesn't have a very good record in the Sun Belt. They beat UTSA in San Antonio on the road, same as Tulane. These guys can't keep their story straight. And I think if you, a lot of times when I'm doing interviews, I have about half a dozen, depending on how long the interview is, maybe 10 questions written out, or at least in my head. And then I can follow up based on what they say. Usually an answer, and these coaches are very good at this. Let's be honest. They know the longer they talk, the less questions I'm going to ask. So they're very good at this. But I can ask follow-up questions based on their answers. So I'll always have, so out of 10 questions or so, I'll always be able to have 30 questions. And it feels like we didn't get to the follow-up questions last night. We asked and moved on, asked and move on. And so that's the only thing. It's not that these guys don't have the same criteria year in and year out. They don't have the same criteria for the same teams. Miami's losses are hurting them. Tulane's loss doesn't hurt them. I don't get it. I don't understand. Alabama went on an incredible. They're penalizing Alabama for struggling running the football against Florida State, which was August, and struggling against South Carolina. Hunter, you know who just struggled against South Carolina? A&M. Why doesn't that hurt them? They both beat them, but you're penalizing Alabama for struggling against South Carolina. A&M struggled against South Carolina. What's going on? So it is kind of crazy on how I just, you could get an attorney in there to cross-examine these guys, and they would not be able to keep their story straight. Not at all. So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily need to see Hunter Yurchek sweat, but it would be nice. Hunter, you're not keeping your story straight, right? Losses over here count, and it's penalizing Miami, but a loss for Tulane doesn't hurt them. Why does that not work out? Why isn't the criteria the same across the board? No. People can have different schedules, but it just feels like these guys can't keep their story straight. That's the only thing that is frustrating. And nobody is happy, which means usually in this case, we're right. Sometimes, kind of feels like both teams are unhappy with the home plate umpire. That means the umpire is wrong. All right. Usually that's the case. All right. So what do you guys think? I just don't think they can keep their story straight whatsoever. It doesn't seem to be consistent across the board. Now, it could be each specific, right? Notre Dame and Miami have 2 losses each, whereas JMU and Tulane do not have 2 losses each, and they're using the strength of schedule for Tulane to outweigh JMU's 1 loss. All right, let's take a timeout. Big nationally televised ball game. You got the Cajuns and Arkansas State coming up, and there's a lot on the line in this one. So let's get to it. We'll talk to you after I tell you about FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets from everything who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. And, of course, we are part of the Locked On Network podcast, the number one sports podcast in America. All right, so Cajuns and the AState, big ball game for both teams. As we're talking about the college football playoff, and it feels like only like 16 teams matter. It doesn't. These games matter a lot, right? Butch Jones has done a fabulous job in Jonesboro, from getting a couple of big-time recruiting classes to going to a bowl game to winning a bowl game. We're hoping he was going to compete, and I guess he was competing. Let's be honest. He was competing for the West Division title until they lost to Southern Miss. It will be 12 days ago. Well, I guess it's 12 days ago today. So he's done a good job. A win against the Cajuns, and they are going bowling for the third straight year. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Cajuns have not had a good season. Not at all. It went down the tube with the first game, which is against Rice. Would have been nice to see if Walker Howard could have finished the ball game, but he couldn't. He's come back and thrown like 2 interceptions out of like 3 passes. We'll see what happens with Walker Howard. That's going to be very interesting. Daniel Beal was certainly not the answer. I feel bad for the kid because he came in highly touted. It's not like he couldn't figure out how to play football, but the game was maybe just too fast for him. And Lunch Winfield comes in, rallies the troops against Marshall, and wins in double overtime, I think. And then struggles for a little bit, and all of a sudden it's 1-2 in a row. Went into South Alabama, went into Mobile, and beat South Alabama. That was impressive. And then got off to a huge lead against Texas State and held off the Bobcats late. Converted a 4th and 2 in Texas State territory, but you don't make that. Texas State's got plenty of time to come back and win the ball, tie the ball game up, or certainly win it. All right. And so there's a lot on the line. Of course, what's overshadowing this ball game, I don't know if it's overshadowing it, but certainly a part of the ball game is the big fight that Texas State and the Cajuns had, where, of course, Texas State started the fight, so 7 Cajuns got suspended. Tyree Skipper, I still haven't seen it, like with my own eyes. Apparently, he was whipping his helmet around, and if that's the case, there's no defending that. I can defend someone getting punched and punch them back. Can't defend someone taking off their helmet and swinging it. You're going to get somebody seriously hurt, all right? So that's unforgivable. So Skipper's gone for two games plus a bowl game. Lost a cornerback. They are down. They have more than a dozen players out, whether they're injured or suspended. It is not a great lineup for the Cajuns. Now, as we mentioned, both teams have had a little time to adapt. Arkansas State had a chance to lick their wounds, cleanse themselves, if you would. We hear that, phrase, don't lose the same game twice. I heard someone say it today on the radio. That was Penn State. Someone mentioned Penn State lost that tough overtime game to Oregon. So then they laid a dud against UCLA and then laid the same dud against Northwestern. So they maybe lost the same game 3 times. And so A-State has a little bit more time. This was not Saturday to Thursday. So you have time to regroup. All right. And the Cajuns, same thing. They have a couple extra days to figure out who's playing where and if they can be effective. A-State wins this ball game. They're going bowling. Cajuns will pick up their 5th win, and they would have ULM at home next Saturday to try and go bowling. All right. Now, I think both coaches have done a tremendous job of coaching this year. You may disagree. Arkansas State played Arkansas. They got trounced. They almost beat Iowa State. Then they lost to Kennesaw State, who apparently is better than we thought they were. At the same time, though, they did fall behind like 21-0 in the first quarter. You're not going to win many ball games, A&M and South Carolina notwithstanding, when you fall behind 21-0 in the first quarter. They made it a ball game, lost 28-21. But then they lost to ULM. Then all of a sudden, AState reeled off a handful of wins to put themselves in a position to compete for the Sun Belt West. And they would have been right in the middle of it if they had taken down Southern Miss. Now they can try and finish with a winning record and go to a bowl game. And, you reel off two straight wins, finish 7-5. You can have a solid season going 8-5. And everyone's going to be wondering if Jalen Rayner is coming back. Is he going to transfer? I don't think he had his best year. Can he go get some money? Is he staying at Arkansas State? Cajuns will have their own quarterback issues, but it has not gone the right way for them. We talked about that. But if Desimo turns this around into a bowl game, and I don't care what happens in the bowl game, I don't. You get to the bowl game. It'd be nice to win the bowl game, but you're probably still going to be undermanned in the bowl game. No Tyree Skipper, that's for sure. If these two guys get their team to a respective bowl game the way their season starts, that's a heck of a coaching job. It really is. We've talked about teams, and I don't know if there's teams that quit yet. App State doesn't look particularly good. I'm not sure if they've quit. ULM doesn't look particularly good. I'm not sure they've quit. We mentioned Texas State. They haven't quit, right? They've just lost a bunch of close ball games. And then they routed Southern Miss. So they haven't quit. We'll see how Troy bounces back. They've had 2 bad ball games. And just because you may come up short in this ball game, Cajuns versus A-State, I don't think either team's going to quit, per se. So we shall see. All right, it is a big ball game for both squads. That is for absolutely sure. And it's fun that it's going to get a little national TV, and it's basically going to be Cajuns and A-State and about 3.5 hours if JMU should get into the bowl game, right? I don't want to, hammer the busting with the boys guys, but I mean, they're saying G5s don't belong because they're going to get blown out. And Chris Falica, the same thing, the Bear, or it was the Felica, the Bear from ESPN and now Fox saying the same thing, but the number 1 seed in the tournament got blown out last year. Tennessee got blown out last year. By who? The 8th seed, which was Ohio State. Now, well, they won the national championship, Dave. Of course they were really good. Yeah, but we didn't know that going into the tournament. All right. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I had my druthers, I'd be interesting to see how the G5 does against Tulane, or Tulane does against if that's Texas Tech, or would it be I don't say rudderless, but a Lane Kiffin-less Ole Miss? Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there that those things can happen. And, we'll see. Of course, Tulane may not have John Summerall. He went from interviewing with Florida to not interviewing with Florida in a matter of hours today. So I'm not sure how that story got out there, but someone put it out there. And he said, thanks, but no thanks. I don't know if that's the case. I'm telling you what's been reported. Who knows why it was reported that way? But I don't know why people are so offended that we have a G5 team. What, you don't think Texas is going to get blown out by Georgia? Didn't that just happen? I don't know. What are we talking about? So, they have their share. They have their opportunities. 3-loss team can't get in there. It's ridiculous if they do. All right. Ridiculous if they do. All right. Let's take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll recap Tuesday night's games and look ahead a little bit. Look at what we're doing Wednesday night for Sunbelt Hoops, and maybe look ahead as well for tonight's hoops, Thursday night hoops. All right. We'll do that right after I thank everybody. All right, off to a great start here, at least this week for subscribers, right past that 2,700 mark. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Don't forget about those audio podcasts as well. Apple and Spotify seem to be the most popular. Apple by a large margin. And again, I'm getting new comments from new people. So I appreciate the everydayers. You guys know who you are. We go back and forth all the time. But I appreciate the new people coming in and making their comments, making it as a solid argument. I may not agree with it, instead of, personal. And I will tell you this right now. You make it personal or get vulgar or profane on Twitter, you're getting muted. I'm not putting up with that. I don't need that. Don't want it. I go back and forth with the Southern Miss fans all the time, and it's just a bunch of good fun. We are all headstrong about our arguments, but we all keep it on the high ground, so to speak. So you start going low, and I'm out. All right. So I do appreciate it, and thank you so much for continuing to get the Sunbelt channel to grow. Still hoping to make it to the Sunbelt Championship. We'll see how that works out. I do have a hotel reservation. I just need the day off. I need to switch with somebody. So again, thank you so much for continuing to have Locked On Sunbelt grow. It is sincerely appreciated. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, again, recapping the Tuesday ball games from the Sunbelt. James Madison had that big win against Townsend. I guess Townsend had won 3 in a row, according to Shane Metlin, over James Madison. James Madison with an 81-75 victory. Bradley Douglas, formerly of Georgia Southern, had 22 points and 6 assists. Xavier with a blowout over Old Dominion, 99-69. Georgia Tech, all kinds of issues with Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, 68-66 Georgia Tech. Let's see if we can find out how that game ended up going. See, was it close at the end? Feels like Georgia Southern, they fell behind by a little bit and made a run. They were down by 9 with 8.5 minutes to go. Down by 9 with 8 minutes to go. And I got back into it. Nicavian White made a 3 with 10 seconds left to go. That made it a 2-point ball game. And they just ran out of time. They actually missed a free throw. Doesn't seem like they got a shot off. No. So they had a shot there at the end. Okay. So Georgia Southern falls to 3-2. Texas State with a win, 63-49 over Abilene Christian. Southern Miss beats, I think, crosstown rival William Carey, 89-52. And a big ball game out west, Troy over San Diego State, 108-107. Again, huge ball game because I think I saw it right. San Diego State doesn't give up 80 points. They gave up 80 points twice last year. Once to North Carolina in the NCAA tournament, losing 95-68. And the only other time they gave up 80 points last year was losing to Gonzaga 80-67. They hardly give up 70 points, although a little bit more often. They do not give up 80 points. They give up 80 points. They don't score 80 points necessarily either. But they're known for their defense and pace. UConn beat them in the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago, 82-52. I mean, should we go through that? They did win. They beat Washington in overtime, 197. Grand Canyon beat them 79-73. But this team, again, doesn't give up 80 points. Like, ever. Yeah, not too many got them last year in 2 seasons ago either. And so for Troy to go out there, and remember, Troy is kind of the same thing. We're going to play tough defense, rebound, and maybe get out in transition and make some threes. But they play the same style of basketball. And Troy with a big win on the road against Stanford. That is impressive. Or against San Diego State. Sorry. I jumped ahead. Cajuns, not so much. They lose to Stanford 93-66. But statistically, very interesting. Because I want to see how the Cajuns shoot. I thought it was one less. They made the same exact field goals as Stanford did. Cajuns were 27-55. Stanford was 27-56. How do you lose by 27? Stanford 11 out of 31 from 3. Cajuns 2 of 9. That's 9 3-pointers more times 3 is 27. That's the difference in the ball game. Also, the free throws were 28 out of 35 for Stanford, 10 out of 17 for the Cajuns. Although now the mathing isn't mathing right, but that's where the difference is. That's where the difference was. So maybe the Cajuns are starting to come around. Josh Lewis is a big-time recruit. He had a pretty good ball game. 16 points on 8 of 14 shooting, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 turnovers, a little bit of foul trouble, played for 30 minutes. It does appear the Cajuns did have some foul trouble there. And Jackson Olvera off the bench, 15 points. So the Cajuns starting out 1-4 under Quantis White. All right. Wednesday. Oh, one more ball. Oh no, I got all the ball games. Wednesday, you do have an undefeated South Alabama team on the road taking on Jacksonville State, who's also undefeated. And then, speaking of Arkansas State, St. Mary's 4-0, hosting Arkansas State, who is 3-1. Arkansas State's had a couple of nice wins on the road. Tonight, along with that big-time college football game, Marshall hosting Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Troy continues this West Coast swing. They're playing the men of Troy. How about that? USC. So that should be an interesting ball game. USC favored by 18.5 points. What do we think? What do we think San Diego State was favored by? Let's see if we can find that. San Diego State was favored by 15.5. The money line was plus 1,100. If you bet San Diego State on the money line, it was minus 2,500. You lost a little bit. But if somehow you pick Troy to win, and again, it's based on $100. So if you bet $100, you would have won 1,100. But you place 25 or 50, it's an 11-1 spread. So that's pretty good. And we did go over the, I think maybe, let's go back over the Thursday ball games. No, we went over those. Okay. So Arkansas Pine Bluff at Marshall and USC and Troy. A lot of Troy puns are going to be made in that one. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to hop on with Dominic and the Sunbelt Syndicate guys. We're going to somehow compare the teams to Bourbon. I mean, we'll figure out how we're going to do that. I wrote down some notes. We'll see how that goes. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. I think we'll probably do somewhat of a recap of the Cajuns ball game because I'm going to be up anyway. A lot of times I go to bed on a Thursday early, but I won't get home until probably 10 o'clock anyway. So games should still be going on, although a lot of times those games don't end until 11. That's kind of rough. We got to do an episode anyways. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. You've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day, part of the Locked On Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. Really do appreciate it. Have a great Thursday, everybody. We'll talk to you again on Friday.